The soft morning sunlight filtered through the gauzy curtains of our guest suite at the Briarwood Estate Inn, bathing the antique room in a golden hue. I sat on the window ledge, sipping my coffee, and tried to push down the knot of nerves forming in my chest. It was my little sister Hayley's wedding day. She was getting married to Jordan Langston, a charming, level-headed financial analyst who had, admittedly, taken us all by surprise. They'd only dated for about 8 months, but when you know, right? Or at least that's what Hayley had told me during a phone call one breathless Friday night. I looked down at my phone again. 8:42 a.m. Still no messages from her. She usually texted me first thing in the morning, every morning, for the last 6 years, ever since our dad passed away. But today, silence. My husband, Mark, stirred in bed behind me. "You okay?" he asked sleepily, his voice gravelly. "Yeah," I lied. "Just wedding jitters. You know how close Hayley and I are. I want everything to go perfectly for her." He sat up, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. "It will. You've been by her side through everything. You're her maid of honor, Rachel. She wouldn't want this day without you." I nodded, forcing a smile. Mark always knew what to say, but today there was something in his voice. A tension he was trying to mask. I noticed it, even if he didn't know I did. We'd been married 9 years, and we'd had our share of ups and downs. What marriage didn't? But lately there was something else. Distance. As if he were carrying a secret too heavy to share. I brushed the thought away. Today wasn't about us. It was about Hayley. I walked over to the closet where my bridesmaid dress hung, a silky, dusky rose gown with delicate chiffon sleeves. Hayley had picked it out for me specifically, calling it soft and classic like you. When I'd first tried it on, she'd said I looked like a storybook character. "Mark," I said as I zipped up the side, "do you think Hayley's really happy?" He paused a beat too long. "She seems happy," he finally said. "Jordan seems fine. Just fine. I mean, they move fast. But people do that sometimes. And I know you're worried about her, but you're projecting a bit, Rach." I frowned at his reflection in the mirror. "Projecting what? You want her life to be steady. Like yours was before." He meant before the miscarriage. Before we'd spent months trying to rebuild our routine after the grief. Before we stopped talking about the baby altogether. I looked away. "Maybe I just want her to not get hurt." "Maybe," he said. "But maybe she won't." I didn't know then how much those words would haunt me. The bridal suite was at the far end of the estate, overlooking a garden blooming with late spring roses. I found Hayley standing barefoot in a silk robe, her hair in giant rollers, giggling with 2 of her friends while sipping on a mimosa. "There's the bride," said my voice bright. Hayley spun around and let out a squeal. "Rachel." Finally. She rushed over to hug me tightly, smelling of citrus and roses. Her eyes were already glowing, and she looked radiant, even without the dress or makeup. "I thought you forgot about me," she teased. "Never," I smiled. "You didn't text me." "I wanted today to be a surprise," she whispered. "Besides, I figured I'd see you first thing anyway." We sat down together while the makeup artist began prepping her face. The girls around us buzzed with laughter and stories about Hayley and Jordan. How they met, their trip to Napa Valley, his corny but cute proposal on the beach. I nodded along, but I kept watching her, watching for signs. Something in her smile felt rehearsed. Her hands trembled slightly when she held her glass. When the others were distracted, I leaned in. "Are you sure about this?" Hayley blinked, startled. "Rachel, I'm not trying to ruin anything," I said quickly. "But you don't have to pretend with me. Are you okay?" He paused. "I love him." "That's not what I asked." She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Her lashes fluttered as the artist dusted blush onto her cheeks. "You'll see," she finally said, her voice almost a whisper. "Everything's going to work out. Just trust me, okay?" It didn't feel like an answer. By 1 p.m. the ceremony was just 2 hours away. The garden was already being arranged with folding chairs and pale lilac flowers. The catering team rushed in and out of the back doors with silver trays. The air smelled like eucalyptus and champagne. I found Mark near the back patio, sipping coffee and staring into the distance. "You good?" he asked. He turned to me. "Rachel, can we talk?" My stomach tightened. "Now." He hesitated. "I need to tell you something. Something important. But not here." "Mark, what's going on?" Pressed. He looked around to make sure we were alone. Then his voice dropped to a near whisper. "After the ceremony, I need you to leave with me. Just you and me. Don't ask questions right now. I promise I'll explain everything, but we can't stay for the reception." "What?" "Mark, that's insane. This is Hailey's wedding. I'm the maid of honor." "I know," he interrupted. "But trust me. For your sake, for hers. We have to go. Before the cake, before the dancing. Just promise me you'll come." I stared at him, stunned. "Are you seriously asking me to walk out of my own sister's wedding without an explanation?" "I'm not asking," he said quietly. "I'm telling you. You need to leave when I say so. Because the truth is going to change everything." The light laughter and string quartet music from the garden drifted into the bridal prep suite, but it felt strangely distant, like I was underwater. Mark's words echoed through my head on repeat. The truth is going to change everything. I sat silently in a velvet chair beside Hailey as the makeup artist added the final touches, watching her blush being blended like nothing in the world was wrong. But something was wrong. Deeply, chillingly wrong. And my husband, the man I'd trusted for nearly a decade, was asking me to leave my sister's wedding without so much as an explanation. I kept glancing down at my phone, fingers twitching, tempted to text him. What truth? What did he know? Was it about Jordan? Or something to do with Hailey? Had something happened between them? My mind spun with ugly possibilities that made my stomach knot and my chest ache. "Rach!" Hailey's voice pulled me back. Her makeup was complete, and now she stood before me in her gown, ethereal and glowing in off-white silk and pearl lace. "You okay?" I blinked. "You look incredible." She smiled faintly, but her eyes searched mine. "You don't. What's wrong?" I tried to smile, but the muscles in my face wouldn't cooperate. I hesitated. What could I even say? "Oh, nothing. My husband told me to leave before the reception and refused to say why." "Well." I couldn't tell her. "Not yet. I just want everything to go smoothly for you," I finally said. Her smile faltered. "You're not the only one who's nervous," she admitted. "You know how fast everything's moved. Sometimes I wonder if I'm jumping into the unknown just because I'm scared of being alone." I looked at her, startled. "Then why are you doing this?" She glanced at her reflection in the floor-length mirror. Her voice barely audible. "Because sometimes the unknown is easier than the silence." I was tired of waiting for something perfect. I didn't know what to say. I thought Hailey had found love. Real, wholehearted love. But now, for the first time, I saw the cracks. The way her hands clutched the bouquet too tightly. The way she kept glancing at her phone like she was waiting for someone or something. I stood and straightened her veil gently. "You don't have to go through with anything you're not sure of," I whispered. She met my eyes in the mirror. "I am sure. Think. But if I hesitate too long, I'll never take any leap." The wedding planner knocked softly and peeked in. "Time to line up, ladies." Everything moved in a soft blur from that moment on. Bridesmaids gathered, the flower girl squealed. The music outside shifted into its opening strains. Hailey gripped my hand as we walked down the hallway toward the garden ceremony space. Her fingers ice-cold despite the warm afternoon. Outside, rows of chairs filled with guests turned their heads as each bridesmaid walked down the aisle. I took my steps slowly, trying to breathe, feeling every eye on me but barely registering them. All I could think about was what Mark had said. Every smile felt fake. Every note of the string music rang hollow. I spotted him near the third row from the front, sitting with his back straight, sunglasses perched on his nose. He looked calm, too calm. And then came Hailey, escorted by our mom. The collective gasp from the audience was genuine. She looked stunning. But as I turned to glance at Jordan, standing beneath the arch of white roses, I saw a flicker of something in his face. Not awe, not love, guilt. His smile didn't quite reach his eyes. He looked stiff, tense, like he was performing a role. And in that moment, I knew Mark's warning had something to do with him. The minister welcomed everyone, and I heard very little of the ceremony beyond the initial greetings. My heartbeat drowned out the words. I couldn't stop scanning the guests, watching Mark. He hadn't taken his eyes off Jordan. Every vow, every promise exchanged between my sister and her groom, felt like it was building toward something unnatural, a storm waiting to break. And yet, they said, "I do." It kissed. The audience erupted into applause. Hailey beamed like sunlight itself. For a split second it was real. And that illusion hurt worse than the truth I feared. The reception was a beautiful whirlwind of soft jazz, clinking glasses, and carefully plated entrees. The grand oak ballroom glittered with candles and golden chandeliers. It should have felt magical, but for me it was like walking through a stage set, knowing the backdrop was about to collapse. I barely touched my food. I kept looking toward Mark, seated beside me, tense and silent, his jaw tight. Finally, during the father-daughter dance, replaced instead with our mother stepping in, he leaned toward me. 5 minutes, he murmured. I turned to him sharply. You have to tell me now. I'm not walking out of my sister's wedding without knowing what I'm walking into. His lips pressed into a thin line. He glanced around, lowered his voice again. Rachel, Jordan isn't who you think he is. And Hailey deserves to know. I didn't want to do this today, but I don't have a choice anymore. I stared at him, suddenly breathless. What do you mean? He pulled out his phone and opened a folder in his gallery. Photos. Dozens of them. Jordan with another woman, sometimes at a restaurant, sometimes on a beach. Laughing. Holding hands. One of them kissing. Each timestamp was from within the last month. My stomach lurched. Where did you get these? I hired someone, Mark admitted. A private investigator. Friend from work. I did it for you. For me. He looked at me hard. You told me you had doubts. You said something about him felt off. So I looked into him. And I found out he's not just cheating. He has another fiancée in New York. She thinks she's marrying him next spring. The world tilted. I had to grip the edge of the table. No, that can't be true. Hailey would have known. She didn't. She doesn't. He used a different name with her. But I matched his face, his voice, even his car. Tim Ratch. I wasn't going to tell you until I had proof. I only got it last night. I felt like I couldn't breathe. My chest burned. I looked across the room at Hailey, laughing with guests, her new ring glinting under the chandelier. She looked like a woman stepping into a dream. But it was all a lie. Mark gripped my hand. If we say something now, we'll destroy her. Humiliate her. But if we wait until they're alone, if we leave and talk to her privately, we can protect her dignity. Tears filled my eyes. But I can't just walk out on her. You won't be walking out. You'll be saving her from a worse kind of pain. I turned my eyes back to Hailey. I remembered the days we spent planning this wedding, tasting cakes, folding invitations, shopping for her dress. I remembered how she cried in my arms after her last breakup, telling me she was tired of being second best. And now, here she was again, falling into someone else's trap, oblivious to the wreckage beneath her feet. The music changed. The DJ announced the first couple's dance. Jordan took Hailey by the hand, and they walked to the center of the floor, surrounded by friends and family. I watched him closely now. His expressions, his movements, they were polished, too smooth. He smiled for the cameras, but his eyes wandered. Cold. Calculating. He was performing. And she was in love with an illusion. Mark leaned in again. When they finish this dance, we go. I'll get the car. You go to her dressing room. I'll meet you there. He hesitated. I know this is painful, he said. But you'll thank me. One day. I nodded slowly, heartbreaking. Because this wasn't just a wedding anymore. This was the first crack in my sister's world. And I was about to help shatter it, just to save her. The dance floor spun gently as Haley and Jordan moved in synchrony, the golden lighting casting their silhouettes in a romantic glow. Guests circled them, swaying to the soft music. Their song, an acoustic version of Can't Help Falling in Love, played like the soundtrack to a fairy tale. And yet, behind every word, every note, I felt the clock ticking. Like a silent countdown to destruction. I stood frozen at the edge of the ballroom, my heart a mix of dread and disbelief. Mark was already gone. He'd slipped out a few minutes earlier to get the car, giving me the briefest squeeze on my arm as he left. I had just a handful of minutes to act before anyone noticed I was gone. Before the chaos, I took one final look at Haley. Her eyes closed as she rested her head against Jordan's chest. It made my throat tighten. That's what love was supposed to look like. Soft, trusting, unguarded. But now I knew. Her trust was misplaced. The man holding her wasn't her future. He was a stranger, liar, fraud. As the song drew to its final chorus and the guests clapped gently, I slipped away from the table and exited the ballroom through the side door, clutching my clutch bag so tightly my knuckles hurt. I took the long corridor back toward the bridal suite, my heels clicking softly against the vintage tile. Every step felt heavy, like I was walking through molasses. Hated this. Hated sneaking away. Hated the truth. Hated that Mark had been right. Inside the bridal suite, the room was quiet. The chaos from earlier was gone. Makeup brushes had been neatly packed away. Hair tools unplugged. The leftover perfume still lingered in the air. Haley's scent, familiar and nostalgic. I sat on the chaise lounge near the window and tried to steady my breathing. I texted Mark. "I'm in the room. Where are you?" He replied almost instantly. "Parking lot. Backside near the chapel exit. Engines on." Another message followed seconds later. "You only have a few minutes. Her toast starts soon." That's right. Haley was giving her speech next. She'd prepared it weeks ago. An emotional tribute to our dad, our mom, even me. She'd even practiced it over FaceTime with me. Her voice trembling with hope. That meant she'd come back to the suite before then, to touch up makeup, maybe rehearse once more. And that was when I'd tell her. Not in public. Not in front of 150 guests. Not under the scrutiny of flashing cameras or her new husband's smug eyes. A minute passed. Then two. The doorknob turned. Haley stepped inside. She looked radiant, flushed from dancing, lips glossy from champagne, veil still intact. But her expression dropped the moment she saw me. "Rachel, what are you doing here? Are you okay?" she asked quickly, closing the door behind her. "I need to talk to you," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She tilted her head, concerned. "What happened?" I took a breath, stood up, and gently led her to the velvet chair. She sat down slowly, still in her dreamlike state. "What I'm about to tell you is going to hurt," I began. "But I need you to listen, and I need you to trust that I'm doing this because I love you." "Rachel," she said, frowning. "You're scaring me. It's about Jordan." She stiffened. I reached into my clutch and pulled out the phone. "Mark found something. He didn't tell me until today because he wanted to be sure. But Haley, Jordan isn't who you think he is." Her face froze. "What are you talking about?" I showed her the photos. I didn't explain them. I didn't try to soften them. I just handed the phone over and let her see for herself. She scrolled in silence, her fingers trembling, her expression blank. Photo after photo, Jordan with another woman. Different ring. A different life. Lie. For a moment she didn't speak. Just stared, eyes glassy. Then her voice cracked. This can't be real." "It is. He's engaged to someone else. Her name is Melissa. She lives in New York. He's been living a double life, Haley. I don't know how he pulled it off, but he did. He fooled you. He fooled all of us. No, she whispered. No. Well, this isn't possible. He loves me. I think he loves what you represent. He loves being adored. He loves the image. But he's not the man you think he is. She pressed the phone to her chest as if trying to block the images from her mind. Her whole body shook. Her breathing turned shallow. I crouched beside her and took her hand. I know this is the worst moment to find this out. I wish more than anything it wasn't today. But we have to go, Haley. You don't owe him a toast. You don't owe him a future. You don't even owe him your silence. She stared ahead at nothing, her voice barely audible. He looked at me today like I was the only woman in the world. He's an actor, Haley. A good one. Silence stretched between us. I need to talk to him, she finally whispered. No, I said quickly. Not now. Not in front of everyone. Please, come with me. Let's go. Mark is waiting outside. You need to leave with your dignity. We'll tell Mom later. We'll figure it out. But she pulled her hand away. Rachel, I have to face him. I need to look him in the eyes and hear it from his mouth. I hesitated. Then let me come with you. She shook her head. No. I need to do this alone. I stood frozen in the middle of the room as she wiped her tears, straightened her veil, and turned toward the door with trembling grace. The bride walking toward her betrayal. And I was helpless to stop it. Back in the ballroom, the lights had dimmed and the DJ's voice boomed through the speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, the bride would like to share a few words with you all. Haley walked slowly onto the stage, microphone in hand. Her posture flawless despite the storm inside her. Jordan smiled at her from the head table, oblivious. She cleared her throat and smiled at the guests. Thank you all so much for being here today, she began. It means the world to me, to us. Jordan stood beside her now, placing a hand on the small of her back. She didn't flinch. But she also didn't lean in. I had prepared a very different speech, she continued. I had written words about love, trust, and destiny. About how sometimes the heart knows something before the mind catches up. But instead of reading what I wrote, I think I need to speak from the truth I just learned moments ago. There was a murmur in the crowd. I stood just outside the ballroom, watching her from the hallway, heart pounding in my ears. Jordan, she said, turning to face him directly. I want to ask you a question in front of all these people. Your friends, your family, and mine. Jordan's smile faded. Is your fiancé in New York named Melissa? The entire room fell into a stunned silence. You could hear a pin drop. Jordan froze. His eyes darted to the crowd, then back to her. What are you talking about? Are you engaged to another woman? She asked again, her voice louder now, trembling but unbreakable. Are you living two lives? Did you lie to me for the past 8 months? He said nothing. And that silence was answer enough. Gasps rippled across the room. Haley handed him the microphone like it was poison. Then you don't deserve this wedding. You don't deserve me. She turned, lifted the hem of her dress, and walked off the stage. Head held high, veil fluttering behind her like a banner of defiance. I ran to her as she reached the hallway. She collapsed into my arms, sobbing. But there was something fierce in her grief. Something clean. Something free. Mark was already waiting outside with the car. We left before the chaos erupted. And in the rearview mirror, as the reception lights grew smaller and the night wrapped around us, Haley whispered through her tears. I'm glad I found out, even if it broke me. Because now I can finally begin again. The early morning light peeked through the gauze curtains of the lakeside cabin we'd rented years ago for family getaways. I had forgotten how quiet the place could be. The kind of quiet that settled not just over the room but inside your chest. No wedding music. No clinking glasses. Just birds, a distant breeze across the trees, and the faint sound of breathing from the bedroom down the hall where Haley slept. It had been less than 24 hours since she stood on that ballroom stage, calling out Jordan in front of everyone. Yet it felt like weeks had passed. So much had been shattered and exposed. And now we sat in the aftermath, sorting through the emotional wreckage of a day that was supposed to be the happiest of her life. I stood in the kitchen, making tea the way she liked it. Peppermint, with a hint of honey and a slice of lemon on the side. A small comfort in the middle of this heartbreak. Mark came down the stairs, freshly showered but still clearly exhausted. "She's still asleep?" he asked softly, rubbing his neck. "I think so," I replied, pouring water into the mugs. "She didn't talk much last night. Just curled up in bed and cried for hours. Then silence. She'll need time," he said. "But she's stronger than she knows." I looked over at him and gave a small nod. We hadn't said much to each other since the car ride. A few necessary words. Comforting gestures. But no real conversation about what had happened. About what it meant. For Haley. For me. For all of us. "You did the right thing," he added, his voice low. "I know," I replied. "But it still hurts." A soft creak came from down the hall, and a moment later, Haley emerged. Her hair was messy, her eyes swollen and pink, but there was a strange steadiness in her walk, like the first few steps someone takes after a storm, soaked to the skin but determined to keep moving. I handed her the tea, and she gave a small, grateful smile. We sat at the breakfast nook in silence for a few minutes, watching the sun rise over the lake. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet, almost contemplative. "I dreamt I was still wearing the dress, walking down the aisle again. But instead of Jordan at the altar, it was Dad." Tears pricked at my eyes, but I said nothing. "He looked so proud of me," she continued. "But he said one thing. The truth will set you free, even if it breaks your heart." Then he kissed my forehead and walked away. Mark reached over and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "I didn't want to believe it," Haley whispered, staring into her tea. "Even with the pictures. Even when I saw his face after I asked about Melissa. A part of me still wanted him to lie. To say it wasn't true. That it was some mistake. I just didn't want the dream to be over." "You loved him," I said softly. "Of course you didn't." She looked at me, eyes tired but clear. "He didn't just lie to me, Rachel. He stole from me. He took time. He took hope. He made me believe in something that wasn't real." "But you took it back," I said. "You walked away." "I didn't walk," she said with a hollow laugh. "I ran. And I'm proud of you," Mark said. Haley wiped a tear from her cheek and finally looked up. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do now. Everything was built around that wedding. Around him. Now what?" "You heal," I said. "And when you're ready, you start again. But this time on your own terms." For the next few hours we sat in our pajamas, wrapped in blankets, sipping tea and slowly talking. Not just about Jordan but about everything. Our childhood. The way we used to play make-believe weddings with pillowcases on our heads and bouquets made of dandelions. How, even then, Haley had always been the one dreaming of a big celebration, and I was the one sitting in the audience taking it all in. "I feel like a failure," she whispered at one point. "Like I let everyone down." "You didn't let anyone down," I said. "He did. You saved yourself. That's not failure. That's strength." Around noon, her phone buzzed for the first time. Message from Mom. "Are you safe? I'm at the hotel. Call me when you can. I love you." Haley stared at it for a long moment, then handed the phone to me. Can you call her? I can't yet." I nodded and stepped outside onto the porch. The air was cool and smelled like pine. Dialed. Mom answered on the second ring. Her voice immediately anxious. "Rachel. Where is she? Is she okay?" "What happened?" "She's okay," I said. "Just shaken. We're at the lake house." She needed to get away. "I don't understand what happened," Mom said, her voice cracking. "Jordan just left. He packed up his things and disappeared. There are rumors flying through the family. Someone said Haley found out he was cheating." "He was," I said gently. "With another fiancé. In another state." Silence. "Oh my God," Mom finally whispered. "How long?" "Long enough. Mark found out just in time. And she confronted him at the reception. I nodded, even though she couldn't see. She did. With grace. With strength. Poor girl, Mom murmured. She deserves so much more. She does. And she'll have it. But she needs time. We promised to keep in touch and ended the call. When I walked back inside, Haley was curled up on the couch watching old home videos we had saved on a cloud drive. Us as kids playing in the yard. Blowing out candles on birthday cakes. Dad teaching us to ride bikes. Laughter from a world that felt a million years away. That night, Mark made a simple dinner. Pasta, garlic bread, and steamed vegetables. We ate quietly, the clinking of forks and soft hum of an old jazz playlist in the background. It was like the three of us had formed our own little sanctuary, cut off from the noise of the world. After dinner, as Mark washed dishes, Haley turned to me. Do you think I'll ever trust anyone again? The question wasn't dramatic. It wasn't even full of pain. It was sincere, honest, human. I think trust doesn't disappear, I said. It just changes shape. Maybe next time you'll ask more questions. Pay closer attention. But yes, you will trust again. She smiled faintly. Do you ever think about what life would have looked like if we never lost Dad? All the time. We didn't cry. We just sat together. Two sisters. Holding the pieces of the past, trying to stitch them into something that made sense again. That night, she went to bed early, exhausted from the weight of it all. I sat on the porch with Mark, watching the stars reflect in the lake. You saved her, I said quietly. No, he said. You did. I just gave you the truth. I turned to him. Thank you for doing it. Even when I didn't want to hear it. He took my hand and kissed the back of it. That's what love is. Sometimes it's not soft. Sometimes it's doing what hurts because it's right. He nodded. In the darkness, the wedding that never was faded further away. And in its place, a new beginning slowly, quietly began. The week after the wedding that never was passed like slow-moving fog, thick with feelings, but with moments of light breaking through. Haley stayed at the cabin with me and Mark, choosing not to return home right away. Her phone buzzed constantly at first. Calls from extended family, messages from friends, even curious reporters who'd caught wind of the drama and wanted quotes for local tabloids. But Haley ignored them all. She needed peace more than explanations. We spent mornings drinking tea on the porch, afternoons walking the trails around the lake, and evenings watching old rom-coms with ice cream and popcorn in mismatched bowls. It was quiet, healing, honest. It was the kind of time we hadn't had together since we were kids, before relationships and careers and heartbreaks started drawing invisible lines between us. One morning, about 5 days after everything unfolded, Haley woke up and told us she was going home. I need to go back, she said softly, her eyes a little less hollow than before. Not because I want to, but because I need to face it. All of it. We didn't try to stop her. Instead, we drove her back. Mark took the wheel, I sat beside Haley in the back seat, and none of us talked much. As we entered the city limits, and the familiar skyline came into view, Haley's fingers fidgeted in her lap. What if people look at me like I'm weak? She asked suddenly. They won't, I said. And if they do, let them. Because they don't know what it took to walk away from something that looked perfect on the outside. She gave a small nod, but her expression remained unreadable. When we pulled up to her apartment, there were a few envelopes taped to her front door. Sympathy cards, it turned out. Some from friends, one from an elderly neighbor, and one simply signed "The Florist," who wrote, "Your strength was the most beautiful thing I saw all week." Inside, nothing had changed. The gifts were still in the living room. The honeymoon suitcase still sat by the front door, packed and untouched. A slice of wedding cake sat in the fridge like it was waiting for a celebration that never came. Haley didn't cry when she saw it. She just took it out, placed it on the counter and said, "Let's eat this tonight." One last taste of what was supposed to be. That night, over glasses of wine, we shared the cake. It was red velvet, her favorite. A little dry now, but still sweet. and symbolic. A dessert that was supposed to mark the beginning of forever now tasted like closure. But the story wasn't over, because 2 days later Melissa called. Haley was folding laundry when her phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Something in her gut told her to answer. She put it on speaker as I sat beside her, sensing this wasn't going to be an ordinary call. "Hello," she said. "Is this Haley?" The voice was calm, polished, little cautious. "Yes. Who's this?" "My name is Melissa Langford. Think we need to talk. It's about Jordan." Haley's hand froze mid-fold. "I know who you are," she said slowly. "And I know what he did." There was a beat of silence. Then Melissa sighed, almost in relief. "Then I'm not crazy." They talked for nearly an hour. I listened quietly as the two women, strangers bonded by betrayal, compared timelines, pieced together his web of lies, and filled in the gaps. Jordan had met Melissa 2 years earlier at a restaurant opening in New York. He claimed to travel frequently for business, but was always vague. It wasn't until Melissa noticed suspicious transactions and distant behavior that she started asking questions. She had no idea he was engaged to another woman until she found a wedding registry email, with Haley's name on it. "I was going to confront him this weekend," Melissa admitted. "But then I found out what happened at your wedding." "You're brave, Haley." "I didn't have the guts." Haley was quiet for a long time before answering. "Maybe I wasn't brave," she said. "Maybe I just ran out of illusions." Melissa offered to send Haley everything she had. Texts, emails, even a few photos he'd sent from what he claimed was a business trip, but was actually the week of Haley's bachelorette party. The final nail in the coffin. The next morning, Haley filed a formal report with the police, not to press charges but to protect others. She submitted evidence of fraud, identity deception, and potential bigamy. It turned out Jordan had been doing this for years, using variations of his name across state lines. He had a record, small scattered infractions. Nothing major enough to have landed him in prison, but enough to sketch a clear picture. He was a con man with a smile and a tailored suit. A few days later, the police found him in Delaware, trying to charm his way into another woman's business. This time, the story made the news, not in tabloids, but in local broadcasts and online crime reports. Haley didn't celebrate when they told her he'd been arrested. She just sat down and exhaled. It wasn't joy. It was release. Weeks passed. The flowers from the wedding dried up and were thrown away. The dress was boxed up and given to charity. Haley left the apartment she'd shared with Jordan and moved into a bright loft on the other side of town. She painted one wall soft yellow, bought her first real couch, started over. But she didn't erase what happened. She didn't hide it. Instead, she wrote about it. Not a blog post, not a tweet, full memoir. She titled it, "The Wedding That Freed Me." It wasn't just a story of heartbreak. It was a story of waking up, of learning to listen to her intuition, of learning to believe herself, even when love tried to convince her otherwise. One Sunday morning 6 months later, I sat in her loft as she read me an early draft. Her voice was strong, clear. The woman who had once cried into her veil was now laughing at her own sentences, adding bold edits with a red pen, sipping coffee like a woman on a mission. "This part," she said, circling a paragraph, "needs more bite. I want other women to feel what I felt, but to know they can walk away too." She looked at me then, eyes shining. "Thank you," she said, "for not letting me marry a stranger." I shook my head. "You saved yourself, Haley. I just helped open the door." We hugged. For a long time. 6 months became a year. Her book got picked up by a local publisher. She started speaking at small women's circles, then larger conferences. Her story spread. Not as scandal but as empowerment. She helped women walk out of toxic relationships. Helped young girls learn the difference between charm and character. Helped herself grow into someone she never imagined she could be. One day, after a panel event, she met someone new. His name was Cole. School counselor. Quiet, thoughtful, kind. She didn't fall fast this time. She didn't rush. She let herself be loved slowly. With time. With questions. With boundaries. And one night, over dinner at our house, she leaned in and whispered, "This time. Feel seen. Not admired. Seen." That was how I knew. She was whole again. Not every story ends with a wedding. Some stories begin with one. A wedding that never happened. A marriage that never was. But from it grew something more powerful than vows. Truth. Freedom. Sisterhood. And the courage to begin again. Thank you for watching. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more deeply emotional, true-to-life storytelling. We post new stories every week that explore love, loss, healing, and redemption. Your support helps us bring more real voices to life. We'll see you in the next story.